It was the last class of the day at Lincoln High, and the atmosphere in the classroom felt as if it were on the brink of an explosion. The feeble rays of the late afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting faint streaks of light across the worn wooden floor. Yet none of the students seemed to notice the tranquil scene outside. The commanding presence of Miss Sarah Thompson, the notoriously strict math teacher, had rendered the entire room silent. With her neatly tied dark hair and sharp glasses perched on her nose, Thompson stood confidently at the front of the class. Suddenly she slammed a hefty math textbook onto the desk with a resounding thud, like a warning bell echoing through the room. Her piercing gaze swept across the students, finally landing on the corner where David Johnson sat. "David Johnson, come up here and solve this problem right now," she commanded, her voice firm yet undeniably challenging. All eyes in the classroom shifted toward David, the quiet boy seated by the window. David had only been at Lincoln High for a little over a month, and from his very first day he had chosen to remain in the shadows. He always kept his head down, avoiding any form of attention. Dressed in a faded school uniform and worn sneakers, David was the epitome of an invisible student. He never raised his hand to answer questions, never took part in discussions, and did nothing to stand out. His consistent silence often made his classmates forget he was even there. "Seriously, David? This has to be a joke," a voice called from the back of the room. "He doesn't even know how to solve basic equations," another student snickered. "Is she trying to embarrass him?" someone else whispered. David heard every word, but he remained silent, his hands clenched under the desk and his heart racing. Although he was accustomed to being underestimated, the sudden spotlight on him felt overwhelming. "David, what are you waiting for?" Miss Thompson's voice cut through the whispers in the room. "Get up here now." Slowly David lifted his head, his deep brown eyes scanning the blackboard at the front. A complex math problem sprawled across the board, filled with intricate numbers and symbols. This was not just any problem, it was designed to challenge even the brightest students in the class. As Miss Thompson stepped closer to the board, studying each line of David's work, the room remained hushed, with no one daring to even breathe too loudly. After a few moments, Miss Thompson muttered almost to herself, "Unbelievable, but this is the correct answer." David stood there, his posture calm, but inside he felt a surge of quiet determination. He didn't need to say anything. The solution on the board spoke volumes. Behind him, the classmates who had mocked him just minutes ago now stared at him in awe, their expressions shifting from disbelief to respect. "David Johnson," one student whispered, "he actually did it." For the first time, David didn't feel like an outsider. The eyes on him were no longer filled with judgment but recognition. The atmosphere in the classroom was so still that it felt as if all sound had been absorbed by the answer on the blackboard. Miss Thompson stood frozen, her eyes sweeping over the equation repeatedly, as if searching for a mistake. But no matter how carefully she looked, the answer remained undeniably correct. As the class began to stir, a few students leaned in close, whispering in astonishment. "He really did it. I can't believe it. David Johnson actually solved the problem. But how is he this smart? He's always been so quiet." Miss Thompson turned around, her expression caught between shock and uncertainty. This was not the outcome she had anticipated when she called David to the board. She had hoped to encourage him to try harder or at least demonstrate to the class that silence wouldn't lead to success. Yet now, she faced an unexpected result. "David," she began, her voice hoarse and lacking its usual sharpness. How did you solve this? This is a college-level problem." David looked at her, his gaze steady yet calm. There was no arrogance in his tone, only quiet confidence. "I just looked at it and saw the answer," he replied. "It's all right there on the board." His explanation was straightforward, devoid of any hint of boasting. Yet it left Miss Thompson momentarily speechless. As the initial shock wore off, a few tentative claps started from the back of the room. Slowly, the applause spread, gaining momentum as more students joined in. Before long, the classroom erupted into cheers mixed with incredulous laughter, as if they had just witnessed something extraordinary. David turned to face the class. Among the familiar faces, he noticed Jack, the boy who had been the loudest in mocking him earlier. Jack now sat frozen in his seat, mouth slightly agape, clearly stunned by what he had just seen. "You, Jack," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper, but loud enough for David to hear. "You're really that smart? Why didn't you ever say anything?" David shrugged lightly. "I didn't think anyone would care." The honesty in his words made Jack lower his head, his face turning a deep shade of red. An awkward silence filled the room until a voice from the back broke it. "David, you're a genius," the girl exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. "You've been hiding this from us all along, haven't you?" David didn't reply. He turned back to the blackboard, letting his eyes rest on the problem he had just solved. A new sensation washed over him. Not fear, not anxiety, but a strange, calming relief. Yet not everyone in the room was ready to accept the outcome so easily. From the front row, Ryan, the class's star math student and Miss Thompson's go-to example of academic excellence, suddenly stood up. "There must be a mistake," Ryan said, his voice rising in frustration. "He never raises his hand, never participates, never even does his homework. How could he possibly solve this?" The murmurs in the room quieted as all attention shifted to Ryan. For a moment the class seemed to hold its collective breath, waiting to see how David would respond. But before he could say a word, Miss Thompson interjected. "Ryan," she said firmly, her voice calm but commanding, "David's answer is entirely correct. Just because you don't understand him doesn't mean he's incapable. I think it's time we all stopped underestimating people based on appearances or assumptions." Ryan sat down abruptly, his face flushing with embarrassment, as the rest of the class turned their attention back to David. He remained silent, not wanting to prolong the moment. But what surprised him most was the small, encouraging smile from Miss Thompson as she looked at him. "David," she said, her tone softening, "you should be proud of what you've just accomplished. You have a remarkable talent, and it's time you stopped hiding it. Sometimes, letting people see who you really are can make you stronger." As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, students began packing their things. Yet instead of rushing out as they usually did, many lingered, their conversations focused entirely on David's unexpected brilliance. A few approached him directly, their faces lit with curiosity and admiration.
"David, that was incredible. I had no idea you were so good at this. Would you mind helping me with some problems? I've been stuck on these assignments for weeks."
David smiled faintly, offering polite responses. He still felt a little overwhelmed, but for the first time he didn't feel out of place. As he walked toward the door, a voice called after him. "David, wait up." He turned to see Miss Thompson standing near the doorway, her expression softer than he had ever seen before. "David," she began, "I owe you an apology. I didn't see your potential earlier, and that was my mistake. But now that I do, I hope you'll never be afraid to show the world what you can do. You have something truly special." David hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Thank you, Miss Thompson. I'll try." Her smile widened, and for the first time, David felt a genuine sense of recognition, not just from his peers but from someone who had doubted him before. As he stepped into the hallway, the golden rays of the late afternoon sun illuminated the polished floor. David took a deep breath, feeling as though a heavy weight had been lifted off his shoulders. For the first time, he didn't feel the need to hide or retreat into the shadows. He knew that the days ahead would bring questions, conversations, and likely new challenges, but now he was ready. If you enjoyed this story, please share your thoughts in the comments below and stay tuned for our next video here on Flourishing Tales. As David stood at the front of the classroom, the gravity of the moment weighed heavily on him. The silence in the room was palpable, and the stares of his classmates felt like 1,000 eyes scrutinizing every move he made. He took a deep breath, trying to shake off the nervousness that threatened to overwhelm him. The complex math problem loomed large on the blackboard, its numbers and symbols swirling in his mind. After a few moments of hesitation, David focused on the equation. The whispers in the background faded away, and he began to write down his thought process step by step. The classroom, once filled with doubt and mockery, now held an air of anticipation. With each stroke of the chalk, he could feel the tension shifting. He was no longer just the quiet boy in the corner. He was a student taking charge of the moment. When he finally finished, he stepped back and looked at his solution. A wave of relief washed over him. He had done it. His heart raced as he turned to face Miss Thompson, whose expression had shifted from skepticism to astonishment. She scrutinized his work, her brow furrowing as she analyzed each detail. The room held its breath, and David could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. "Unbelievable," Miss Thompson finally breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But this is correct." The words hung in the air like a magical incantation, transforming the room's energy in an instant. A few students exchanged shocked glances, and the realization of what had just happened began to sink in. The atmosphere shifted from disbelief to admiration. "David Johnson actually solved the problem," someone murmured, incredulous. The whispers spread throughout the classroom like wildfire, igniting newfound respect for him. As applause erupted from the back of the room, David felt a rush of emotions. He had transformed from the invisible student into the center of attention, and for the first time, he experienced a sense of belonging. As the clapping grew louder, he caught sight of Jack, the boy who had mocked him just moments earlier. Jack's mouth hung open in disbelief, clearly taken aback by David's unexpected brilliance. "Wow, I didn't see that coming," Jack admitted, his tone shifting from derision to genuine surprise. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" David shrugged, feeling a swell of confidence. "I didn't think anyone would care." His honesty resonated and Jack nodded, a faint blush creeping onto his cheeks. "David, you're amazing," a girl chimed in from the front row. "You've been hiding this talent from us all along." As the excitement in the classroom reached a crescendo, Miss Thompson stepped forward, eager to harness this newfound energy. "Class, let this be a lesson that everyone has hidden talents. Never underestimate someone based on their silence or appearance." Her words struck a chord, and David felt a warmth spreading through him, knowing he had not only surprised Miss Thompson but had also gained the respect of his peers. With the bell ringing, signaling the end of class, students began to gather their belongings. However, instead of rushing out as they typically did, many lingered, eagerly discussing David's remarkable achievement. A few approached him, their enthusiasm palpable. "David, can you help me with some math problems? I had no idea you were this good." One student asked, their eyes shining with admiration. David smiled, feeling a blend of pride and disbelief. He had never imagined this moment would come. As he walked out of the classroom, he felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Finally, he had stepped into the light. As the excitement from David's successful problem-solving began to settle, the classroom buzzed with energy and newfound respect. David stood at the front, still processing what had just happened. The applause had faded, but the warmth of acceptance enveloped him like a comforting blanket. For the first time he felt seen, not just as the quiet boy in the corner but as someone with genuine talent. Miss Thompson, her expression transitioning from surprise to pride, walked over to David. "You should be very proud of yourself," she said, her voice softer than usual. "What you accomplished today is truly remarkable. You have a gift, and it's time you stopped hiding it." Her words resonated deeply with David. He had always been afraid to stand out, fearing judgment and ridicule, but now he realized that perhaps his silence had been a barrier to his own potential. The other students, still buzzing with excitement, began to gather around him, their expressions a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "David, how did you even figure that out?" one boy asked, leaning in with genuine interest. "You've been so quiet, and then you just nailed that problem." "I just looked at it differently," David replied, his voice steady but tinged with disbelief. "I tried to break it down into smaller parts." As he spoke, he noticed the class hanging on his every word, their faces eager and engaged. It was a stark contrast to just minutes before, when he had felt invisible. Jack, who had been one of the loudest skeptics moments earlier, now approached David with a sheepish smile. "I'm sorry for doubting you, man. I didn't know you had it in you," he admitted, extending a hand. "Can we work together on some math stuff? I could really use your help." David nodded, feeling a sense of camaraderie begin to form. "Sure, I'd be happy to help." The thought of collaborating with his classmates excited him, and for the first time he felt a sense of belonging. As they continued to chat, Miss Thompson clapped her hands to regain their attention. "All right, class. Let's remember that today's lesson goes beyond math. It's about recognizing the potential in everyone around us. David has shown us that we should never judge others based on their silence or past behavior." The students nodded, some exchanging glances of understanding. "This is a great reminder for us all," one girl added. We should support each other more. David felt a swell of gratitude toward his teacher for making this moment so significant. He had not only gained the respect of his peers, but also a mentor who believed in him. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, David couldn't help but smile. The conversations continued as he walked out, the atmosphere now filled with warmth and encouragement. "David, wait up," called out Jack as they left the classroom together. "Let's grab lunch and tackle some math problems. I've got a ton of questions." David could hardly believe how drastically his day had changed. Just hours ago, he had been the invisible student. Now he was part of a community that recognized his abilities. As he stepped into the hallway, the sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow on the polished floor. David took a deep breath, feeling lighter than ever. Today marked a significant turning point in his life, and he was ready to embrace the opportunities ahead. If you enjoyed this story and want to share your thoughts, feel free to leave a comment below. We appreciate your support here at Flourishing Tales. The next morning, David walked through the entrance of Lincoln High with a strange mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Yesterday's events still felt surreal, like a dream he might wake up from at any moment. As he moved through the hallway, he immediately noticed something different. The usual indifference that greeted him had been replaced with smiles and nods of recognition. A few students even called out, "Morning, David," as he passed, something that had never happened before. "David!" "Hey, David!" A familiar voice called from behind. Turning around, he saw Jack jogging toward him, weaving through the crowd with determination. "Good morning," Jack said, slightly out of breath. "Listen, I was thinking you should sit with me in math class today. We could go over some problems together before the test next week." David raised an eyebrow, surprised by the invitation. "Go over problems together?" Jack grinned, adjusting his backpack. "Yeah, I mean, after yesterday, well, you're obviously a math genius. You could help me understand some of the harder concepts. What do you say?" David hesitated, then smiled. "Sure, but I'm not sure I'll be good at explaining things." "Doesn't matter," Jack replied, patting David's shoulder as if they'd been friends for years. "You're smart. We'll figure it out." As they entered the math classroom, David was greeted by an unexpected sight. Written in bold letters across the blackboard were the words "David Johnson, the unexpected math prodigy." The entire class erupted into applause when he stepped inside. Some students whistled, while others playfully drummed on their desks in support. David froze momentarily, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment and pride. He gave a small nod of acknowledgement, unsure how to respond to this sudden attention. Miss Thompson approached him, her usual stern expression replaced with a warm smile. "David, I've been thinking a lot about what happened yesterday," she began. "Your talent isn't just impressive, it deserves to be nurtured and encouraged. That's why I have a proposal for you." David looked at her curiously, a knot of anticipation forming in his stomach. "A proposal?" Miss Thompson nodded enthusiastically. "I want you to join Lincoln High's math team. We're competing in the state championship in 2 months, and I believe you'd be an invaluable member. What do you think?" The classroom fell silent as everyone awaited his response. From the back, whispers began to ripple through the room. "He's got to say yes, right? With David on the team, we could actually win state this year." David stood frozen, his thoughts racing. He had always avoided being part of any group, preferring to blend into the background. But now, as he looked into Miss Thompson's encouraging eyes and saw the hopeful faces of his classmates, something shifted within him. This wasn't just a challenge, it was an opportunity to step into the light and embrace his talents. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." The room erupted into cheers, louder than before. Jack, grinning widely, slapped David on the back. "I knew it. You're going to be the star of the team." As the excitement settled, David couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Fear, excitement, and pride all swirled together as he contemplated the journey ahead. For the first time, he was stepping out of the shadows and into a spotlight of his own making. If you're enjoying David's journey, don't forget to leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. We'd love to hear what you think might happen next in this story. As the weeks passed, David's life transformed dramatically. No longer just the quiet boy in the corner, he had become a vital member of the Lincoln High math team. Practices were intense, filled with challenging problems and spirited discussions. David found himself at the center of study groups, helping his teammates understand complex equations and strategies. The attention was both exhilarating and daunting, yet he welcomed it, feeling more confident with each passing day. During practice one afternoon, Jack turned to David with a wide grin. "You know, I can't believe how much I've improved since we started working together. You're like a walking textbook." David chuckled, his initial shyness fading. "I'm just happy to help. It's nice to see everyone getting better." The camaraderie among the team members grew stronger. They shared laughter, exchanged tips, and even tackled difficult problems together. David felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. Miss Thompson continued to encourage him, often reminding the team of his remarkable talent. "David shows us that with hard work and determination, we can all achieve more than we think," she would say, her pride evident. As the state championship approached, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. David was both excited and anxious. The thought of competing against other schools filled him with a mix of determination and nerves. "What if I mess up?" he wondered. But every time doubt crept in, he reminded himself of the support he had from his teammates and Miss Thompson. On the day of the championship, David arrived at the auditorium filled with spectators and competitors. The air was thick with tension and excitement. As the competition began, the questions ranged from challenging to mind-boggling. David focused intently, his mind racing as he calculated solutions. He could feel the eyes of his teammates on him, their support giving him strength. During the final round, the tension reached its peak. The score was tied, and the last question appeared on the screen. David's heart raced as he scanned the equation, his mind working like a well-oiled machine. He quickly broke down the problem, each step unfolding clearly in his mind. The room was silent, every gaze locked on him as he confidently leaned into the microphone. 17, he declared, his voice steady. "Correct," the announcer shouted, and the auditorium erupted into applause. David's teammates leaped to their feet, cheering and hugging him in celebration. The thrill of victory washed over him, and he felt an overwhelming sense of pride. He had not only helped his team win, but had also proven to himself that he could rise to the occasion. After accepting the trophy on behalf of the team, David glanced at the crowd, his heart swelling with joy. Miss Thompson was in the audience, clapping proudly. For the first time he felt seen, recognized not just for his intellect, but for his determination and courage. As they returned to school the next day, the atmosphere was electric. David was greeted like a hero, students stopping him in the halls to congratulate him. He was no longer the invisible boy. He had become a symbol of what one can achieve with hard work and belief in oneself. If you're enjoying this story and want to see how David's journey continues, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you here at Flourishing Tales. The state championship competition unfolded in a grand auditorium, filled with hundreds of spectators. David and his teammates from Lincoln High stood proudly on stage, their school name displayed prominently on a sign before them. The tension in the air was almost tangible as the competition began, with questions that seemed to increase in difficulty with each round. David remained focused, his mind clear and methodical as he worked through each problem. His teammates followed his lead, drawing confidence from his calm demeanor. Together they advanced through each round, their synchronized efforts earning them admiring glances from the audience and concerned looks from their competitors. As they reached the final round, Lincoln High found themselves tied with Westfield Academy, a school known for its academic excellence. The championship now hinged on a single question. The room fell silent as the problem appeared on the large screen. David scanned the equation, his heart racing but his mind steady. Each step of the solution unfolded in his head with remarkable clarity. The answer is 3.1559. David spoke confidently into the microphone, his voice unwavering. A moment of suspense hung in the air before the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Correct. Lincoln High wins the state mathematics championship. The auditorium erupted into thunderous applause. David's teammates leaped from their seats, enveloping him in a group hug. Their faces beamed with joy and pride, a stark contrast to the skepticism they had shown just weeks ago. Thompson, watching from the audience, stood up, clapping vigorously, her eyes glistening with tears of pride. As David stepped forward to accept the trophy on behalf of the team, the cheers from the crowd grew even louder. In that moment, standing under the bright lights with the gleaming trophy in his hands, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This wasn't just about winning a competition, it was about finding his place in the world. The next day at Lincoln High, David was greeted with a hero's welcome. Students who had barely noticed him before now stopped him in the hallways to congratulate him. Teachers nodded approvingly as he passed, and even the principal made a special announcement over the intercom, celebrating the team's victory and David's exceptional contribution. Despite the newfound recognition, David remained humble. He continued to help his classmates with their math problems, never turning away anyone who asked for assistance. His quiet confidence had grown, but his genuine nature remained unchanged. "I never thought I'd say this," Jack admitted during lunch one day, "but you've completely changed how I see things, David. You've shown me that it's never too late to discover your potential." David smiled, appreciating the genuine sentiment. "Thanks, Jack. I think I needed to learn that too." As the days passed, David found a balance between his newfound popularity and his natural inclination for quietude. He was no longer hiding his talents, but he also didn't seek the spotlight unnecessarily. He had become a symbol of perseverance and hidden potential at Lincoln High, inspiring others to look beyond appearances and assumptions. If you've enjoyed following David's journey of transformation and self-discovery, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What challenges have you overcome that seemed impossible at first? Share your experiences with our Flourishing Tales community. As David settled back into his routine at Lincoln High, he felt an overwhelming sense of contentment. The once quiet boy who had blended into the background had transformed into a confident young man, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. The golden rays of the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the classroom where he had first found his voice. After winning the state championship, David had become a source of inspiration not just for his classmates, but for teachers and staff as well. Students frequently approached him for help with math, and he was more than willing to assist. He found joy in sharing his knowledge, and each time he explained a concept, he felt the thrill of empowering others. One day, as he sat in his usual spot by the window, a small group of students gathered around him, eager to tackle their homework. "David, I can't believe how much I've improved since you started helping us," one girl said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "You really make it easy to understand." David smiled, appreciating the compliment. "I'm just glad to help. Remember, we're all in this together. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask." His confidence had grown, not just academically, but personally as well. David found himself engaging more during discussions, sharing his thoughts and opinions without hesitation. His classmates began to view him as an equal, and he cherished the friendships that blossomed around him. One afternoon, as he and Jack were studying together, Jack turned to David. "You know, I used to think being good at math was all about being smart. But seeing you in action showed me that it's about hard work and not being afraid to show what you can do." David nodded, reflecting on their journey. "It's true. Everyone has their strengths, and sometimes it just takes the right moment for them to shine." Ms. Thompson continued to encourage David, often using his success as a teaching point for her students. David's journey shows us that potential is often hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right opportunity to emerge, she would say, her pride evident. As the school year progressed, David faced new challenges, more difficult math problems, group projects, and the pressure of upcoming exams. Yet he approached each obstacle with a newfound sense of resilience. He had learned that overcoming difficulties was part of growth, and he was ready to tackle whatever came next. On the last day of school, David walked through the hallways, feeling a mix of nostalgia and excitement for the future. He had built a community of support around him, and he knew he could rely on his friends and teachers as he moved forward. As he stepped outside into the warm afternoon sunlight, David took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift. He was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, equipped with the knowledge that he had the strength to succeed. The journey was far from over, and David was eager to see where it would lead him next. If you've been inspired by David's story and have your own journey to share, we invite you to leave a comment below. We love connecting with our community here at Flourishing Tales. Let's continue to support and uplift each other.